friends. This is Colleen.
And this is Margaret.
And we're the Cousins Weird. We're not together again because, Margaret's sick and we're busy and we're trying to get this recorded between lots of technical difficulties. Our regular episode was delayed a lot. You're going to hear this one before our normal episode. So today you're hearing this on Thursday, but we're going to have our regular Monday episodes released on Friday. So we're all backwards and confused this week, but it's okay because we got 2 episodes out this week. That makes me really proud of us. We persevered.
Yes, even though the one is quite a few days late, it's okay.
It's okay. We're all right. Everything's fine.
Yes.
Hopefully next week we'll be back on track again. So we're on Terrible Trends number 15.
Woohoo!
I am shocked. So this trend is called the father killer.
Oh.
And it's probably nothing. It's probably nothing you wouldn't even guess. When I tell you, be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. So back in 1827, there was a housewife in Troy, New York named Hannah Lordman Fogg, something like that. She invented the detachable shirt collar. She's genius, really, because her husband wanted clean shirts every day, and she's like, oh my god, I gotta hand wash all this stuff and make it clean for him every single day, and then press it and make it look nice. And she's like, but all you see on him is his collar. So why do I make this collar, cut it off his shirts, and just have him wear it, and I can just wash the collar? Because this is before laundry, we didn't have laundromats, and we didn't have washing machines.
You're beating the laundry in the river on a rock at this point,
It's a lot of manual labor involved in washing. So she invented this, and it took off like crazy. People, she solved a problem for many moms of young men and many wives of the white collar working class. See where that comes from? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So since the collar was the only thing soiled, they could just wash that now. And then they also could get different types of collars and wear them and look like they have all these different shirts. And really the guy's wearing the same grungy, probably stinky shirt underneath everything he has and just switching out that collar. Yeah. So it brought in wardrobes in a way because look at all the different collars I have. Originally, the collars are made of starch linen or cotton. So they would really, really starch it because they wanted it crisp and stiff, But that wilted as the day went on. You start to sweat, you get warm, it wilts the collar. So then they decided to use cardboard paper covered in cotton, thinking that would keep it upright. But again, moisture from our skin and sweat makes it so that just kind of gets yucky over time, and it's not as easily washed because there's cardboard like paper. How do you wash that? So that becomes expensive. So in many years later, there was in 1870. So in 1827, the detachable collar started, and they tried all these different methods to keep the collar looking good. In 1870, celluloid plastic was invented. It was the first thermoplastic. It could be molded and shaped, making the perfect thing for collars, right? It was lightweight.
Yep.
It could be cleaned real easy. You just wipe it off. There really was nothing bad about it. They would even make it so it looked like it had stitching, like the stitches and lines in fabric. They made it look like fabric, but it was just celluloid, and it was
white plastic.
White plastic, and with celluloid it was kind of cool because you could color it, so it was clear, but they made it opaque white. So that was one of the many.
Thinking you're just buttoning a strip of plastic on your neck. Can you imagine how sweaty that was?
Yeah.
Horrible.
But back in the 1800s, people didn't care about comfort, Margaret. It was what you looked like. The women we know died for their fashion, literally, and so did men, apparently. Uh-oh. So one of the disadvantages, however, there were disadvantages, was that celluloid is highly flammable. It was flexible, but it wouldn't stretch. So it could bend a little bit, but it's not stretching fabric stretches. Right. And this isn't stretching. So because it's highly flammable, there were people that were badly burned and somebody even killed because they got too close to the fire.
Or they're smoking a cigarette.
Or they're smoking a cigarette. And I have some stories about this a little bit.
Oh, God.
A little bit later about that. So with the collars being very stiff, over time, the collars kept getting higher to the point that at one point they were at 4 inches tall. So they were really snug and tight to the neck.
I'm like doing that with my finger. That's a freaking high collar. I don't even think my neck is that long.
No!
My neck is not 4 inches long.
It'd be right up into my double chin. Because of this, because of the fact that it's highly flammable and that it was like very stiff and snug, it became basically its own deadly weapon. And people started calling it the Vader mortar, which is German for father killer. Because of the tightness of it, it could basically cut off your carotid artery. It was kind of like a corset around your throat.
It was
they were wearing these
for the men making them wear corsets for freaking centuries.
Right?
So, like, we're gonna give you a corset for your neck. You're gonna die.
Yes. There was a Boston
bastards.
There was a Boston streetcar motorman who was getting these attacks of dizziness and fainting. And he ended up having to go to the hospital because you can't be driving a streetcar if you're passing out. They discovered what was happening was when he was turning his head wearing the collar, it was putting pressure on that carotid artery. Right? How do you say that? Am I saying that right?
Yep. The carotid.
Carotid. Thank you. Which would cause him to feel faint, lightheaded, because the blood flow wasn't happening to his brain.
He wasn't getting any blood to his brain.
Yeah. So he was passing out because of the collar.
Oh my God. He was giving it was like a chokehold in the wrestling move. He was getting choked out.
Actually men who would start choking if they didn't take their collar off when they ate. Their food would be like trapped. They start choking if they didn't get off fast enough. They would suffocate. Yeah. One of the most famous cases reported of this, it's actually, you can read it in the New York Times, like an old archived article. I didn't want to pay the money to do it, but I saw that it was there. It happened in 1888. So this is 18 years later. People are still, they know it's flammable. They know it's uncomfortable. They're still wearing these goddamn plastic things. It doesn't matter to them. I'm just going to keep on wearing it.
Oh, man.
Is this
fashion.
Yeah,
you got to do it for fashion.
Fashion kills.
No hair in your eyelids. Fashion.
One of the most famous cases, like I said, was 1888. His name was John Kretze. He was found dead in the park. And when the police investigated, they said that he was drunk and sat in the park bench before, like, passing out, basically. Sitting up. That his head fell forward towards his chest, causing the celluloid collar to strangle him. So it, like, collapsed his esophagus and it folded over and he couldn't breathe and he died because he was drunk and passed out. And like I said, you would think that it was in the New York Times. People would be like, no, I'm done. Not wearing those anymore. Like, people are dying, catching on fire, going ablaze. Nope. They lasted until like the 30s.
Oh my God.
From, what was it? I didn't say it got invented in 1822. 1822 it was invented. So 100 years. People were wearing, the regular collar was different because when they made the cellular, so that was 1870. So that's 60 years. Still, 60 years people just kept wearing this stupid, sweaty, gross thing that made you die.
You know, it's funny. I've seen pictures of men wearing this collar. It just looks uncomfortable.
I know.
It looks uncomfortable. Like, that can't not be nice to wear all day.
No.
It can't be nice to wear for 5 minutes.
Not only was this collar a father killer and is a terrible trend in itself. One of the worst, terrible parts, in my opinion, one of the worst parts was during this time when the celluloid collar was really like hitting it big, was a time when Chinese immigrants were coming to the United States. There was a lot of Chinese immigrants coming. The collar, when they advertised the collar, it pushed the whole no laundry, not having to use a launder or laundry as a virtue in opposition to the Chinese immigrants. The Chinese community was identified with laundering, community, like doing laundry.
Right. They were launderers.
Thank you. I was like, what is that word? So the collar makes its mark basically through racism.
That's not surprising.
Yeah. And then the slogan was no more Chinese cheap labor if you wear this collar.
Oh my God. And I'm not surprised because, it's like, I would rather wear this collar that could kill me than give money to a Chinese immigrant.
Yes.
It's
Like,
terrible.
How friggin' I mean, I'm not.
I'm sorry.
Either.
If that's why people were wearing the collar, then I hope that they suffocated to death.
I know.
Because they're assholes.
And you should see, and I like, Party wants to put an advertisement in our pictures so that you can see how ridiculous and awful it was. And the other part, it's so blatantly stereotypical and racist and ugly that I don't want to even put it on the internet.
You might not, you know what though? You might put us in Facebook jail, so maybe you better not.
It's just horribly racist. The drawings they did of the Chinese people were absolutely awful. I was like, are you kidding me? But there also had these other ads of animals wearing the collars. And then they started doing not just collars, but they did cuffs, because the cuffs were starting to show in fashion. So you put your cuffs on, you put your collar on, and there was like weights in it and stuff that hooked it in. And then they had like a chest plate that rolled down. Have you ever seen like the cartoons where the chest thing rolls up? And I was like, what's that? They actually it was like a plastic thing that rolled down, so you always look like you had clean stuff on. It was a neck, like the collar with the chest. So when they started showing more of their chest under suits, it was plastic.
People were that damn lazy that they didn't want to have to like wash their clothes. Let's just wear this
racist
horrible, smelly, sweaty plastic thing on my body every day. The same one every day. And you know they didn't wipe that thing off. Did it get dirty? Why would they need to?
Ian, think about it. The shirt they had underneath it, the undershirt, they didn't ever wash that because it never was shown.
Ew.
I know.
Ew.
And to this day, barristers in the UK still wear a detachable collar. I don't think it's a celluloid one though. The uniform worn by the Eton College, they have to wear one. And then obviously like priests and ministers wear it's called the clerical collar, you know, where it's that white thing
too, though, I think.
Yeah, that one's plastic.
Celluloid. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's celluloid though, because of the flammability of it. I don't know if they use that now for clothing, but it's a type of plastic for sure. I just found some more information about celluloid in general, about how it was like such a huge thing because you could make like luxury materials out of it, where people wouldn't be able to afford jewelry and fashion accessories that were expensive back then. They could make it and color it to make it look like jade, ivory. Faux ivory was huge. Like they were making everything out of plastic to look like ivory. They were calling it French ivory. And marble. And middle class women could wear these beautiful things that they never got to wear before and look like they had expensive stuff, you know. They also would make decorative storage boxes, manicure sets, or like, you know, the dresser sets, you know, with the brush and the mirror, handheld mirror. If you ever seen those, like maybe at an antique place or something that people would keep on their dresser, those probably were made from celluloid, not ivory, as what the more rich people would have, which was interesting, I thought. Another thing they made with the plastic was film. So
yes, I knew that.
Right.
Celluloid film. Yep.
When you ever seen video or things in a movie where the film goes up in smoke, is because celluloid, like we said, is highly flammable, and the hot bulb and the old projectors used to make it burst into flames, and a lot of movie theaters burnt down. There was a man that lit a whole motel on fire in Canada because he lit a cigarette on a celluloid toilet seat.
Oh.
Yeah. Can you imagine if that's how you went out?
No, that's awful. You know, it's funny, like, this is not a celluloid thing, but when I worked at Claire's back in the 90s, we had like our knockoff jewelry, you know, like the quartz jewelry like for weddings or prom, and it was all fancy. We had this thing where you could pick it out, and then we had these special markers that we could color the gems in.
Ooh.
But it cost like extra, and they're like, oh, I want this, but I want these middle ones here blue, or it was like all these different colors, but they were special. They're probably just like Sharpies, you know what I mean? But like they would buy the